Hello, this is Kathy Beatty with Divorce Support Anonymous, coming to you, bringing a guest that I'm very excited about interviewing this morning. Divorce Support Anonymous is here to walk with you every step of the way through divorce and after divorce. And sometimes I find some incredible people who are wonderful resources to those folks that I work with. And so I want to welcome April Shippy this morning. Good morning, April.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very excited about having you. I'd like to just read your bio and
Okay.
then jump into some questions because your credibility is amazing. April Shippey is a certified mental health coach and a master financial coach. She combines her knowledge of personal finances and advocacy with trauma-informed financial coaching services to help women with their money mindset, budgeting principles, and debt reduction planning. She likes to combine personal finance with trauma healing practices. She has seen the oppression and abuses within intimate relationships. She wanted to find a way to help women reclaim their voices. She's worked in various financial areas, including banking, mortgage servicing, and corporate finance. Quite the financial background there.
It's been a journey, that's for sure.
Yes, I'm sure. And the different perspectives, I'm sure really help when you're dealing with women who uh, don't know where to go for resources. So, my first question has to do with that. How do you help women who have never handled finances before and find themselves now handling all the household finances after divorce? And it's a bit overwhelming for them, isn't it?
It can be, and it's not only that finances, there's trauma around assuming there's financial abuse or you've never learned and that kind of thing. But as a culture, there's so much pressure put on finances that there's even another layer that even if you don't have trauma, finances can be difficult. And that's just I try to provide a space where that's we can talk about what was in your past. I'm not in counselor trying to fix the things in the past, but we want to have a space where they can speak it out loud and have somebody listen and hear, and then work through some of those things that might catch our attention in the story, and try to heal or address those type of woundings and help them work towards getting confidence into being able to do new things. So like you're healing other areas when you're going through a divorce process, there's a lot of healing and growth and opportunities in that regard that we can also do that along with our finances too.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept that maybe a lot of people have never heard, that we need healing in our finances.
Hmm.
So I love that thought because many of us have some strange ideas about finances, that it's overwhelming, that they can't handle it, or they're going to be an emotional spender to prove something to
Hmm.
someone, and it gets us in all kinds of trouble, right?
Yeah. And then you can't talk about it because it has the stigma, it's not just, there's a lot of stigmas we're working through going through a divorce process by itself, and then having the stigma of finances. And I provide this open space to have that conversation, and just to allow them to speak it out loud sometimes is very healing just in the beginning. But also then now that we know where you're starting from, what's the next step that would make sense for you? Do we need to start, thinking of decision making process? We want to work on that, or do we want to just take the next step? We're not trying to make the entire thing happen by the end of a session, but just trying to work through. So it depends on where they're coming from, how much background they've had or none, and then kind of getting a starting place. What's the next step that would get us towards being more confident in making decisions and having a budget? And I don't view a budget as restrictive. I view a budget as you telling your money what to do. We're making a plan. It's, yes, I can do this, but it's going to take me X amount of months to save towards that. So that's my plan to getting to my goals, instead of being restrictive, telling you no all the time.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of shame involved here too, isn't
Mhm.
there? Yeah.
Yeah, and the income's going to change. There's a lot of changes going on with divorces. And so to give yourself grace when you're going through that, because you don't even know, how the income is going to be at the end of the day. at the end of the divorce, 6 months from the divorce, there's plenty of space for having a gray area, but working through making the best decisions that you can at that time to help you feel more confident so that once things settle down, you can follow into more of a groove or something like that
Mhm.
once things kind of calm down into a routine.
Yeah, and there's so much value in being having guidance and having
Hmm.
an expert like yourself to guide people through this process. And the shame that we feel, I think, comes from, well, we should know this. We should know better at this age. But a lot of us don't. And that's
Right,
okay. You have to start from where you're at, right?
right.
I love that. So, how did you get started with working with domestic violence survivors in their finances?
Well, it's kind of a long story, so I'll try to keep it short. I've been working with finances. I have found I enjoyed helping my mom. My mom did our finances growing up, and I enjoyed sitting with her, helping her balance the checkbook like when I was like 8 years old. So apparently that's not a normal thing, but I've always been drawn to that, I guess. And then so when I was in school, I got my degree in finance. And, when I started working, there weren't too many other women in there. It was a lot of men, which is fine, but it wasn't, you know, it was just different, I guess, a different path for most women to go in. And I didn't realize at the time that's just what I like to do. But then, so working through all those different finance type jobs. And then when I had kids, stayed home. I wanted to stay home. And so, in staying home with kids, I had one of my best friends, she went through a domestic abuse type situation with some addiction. Her husband had some addictions and stuff like that. And, I found out about that like a year and a half after she found out, just her discovery day, disclosure day or whatever it was. Um, and then she had been in counseling for a year or so at that time, but she started walking me through what she had lived through. And I would, be curious and want to support her the best I could. And I'm an Enneagram 5, which just means I like to read and learn. And this became a niche area that it's like my eyes were open to this whole other world, and my passion of like it awakened something inside me to want to help these women was something that came kind of easy to me. And but in a way that that just the foundational pieces, like I just work with the money mindset, budgeting, debt reduction planning. Anything beyond that, I have people I can refer out to, investments or social security planning or taxes, that type of thing. I can refer that out. I just want to work with the women who need that foundation,
Mhm.
help them think of questions that they need to ask their financial advisor or,
Ah,
those type of things. But I want to empower them to make the decisions for what they need. And because everyone's situation is going to be totally unique.
right, right. How wonderful. So you meet them where they're at.
Mhm.
You really touched on this, but I think it's worthy of repeating. Finances have emotional aspects to it also.
Mhm.
How do you see this affect women handle their money, and how do you help them?
Well, a lot of times, depending on what kind of experiences you had in childhood or if you had financial abuse before divorce, um, just like a trauma response could be, like you said earlier, that excessive spending. If you're not self-aware to realize, really sit with that feeling of what's driving me to want to spend, it's gonna, show up in your bank account. And so a lot of our trauma can show up in our money. And so trying to have that conversation of, maybe this is related to this. What do you think about that? And then giving them the opportunity to be able to bring that up with their counselor and talk through that within themselves. Because, you don't go to counseling for financial trauma. That's not something somebody usually thinks of, I guess. But um, trying to help them. Oh, this expert here could really help me with this. I just want to give them that time to try to help make those connections. And some people are like want to save because they've lived without for so long now. They want to build up an emergency fund or whatever, but doing that in a way that's appropriate and not out of fear and addressing those emotions that go along with it, just to give space for those, to try to understand where they're coming from, where the feelings are coming from, the thoughts behind those feelings, that type of thing, and just try to work that out. Because having emergency fund is wise, but if you're driven out of fear, that's going to start making other issues too. So we want to make sure that as we work along, we're doing it with a healthier, more open mindset.
Yeah, I love that. So money mindset is so important.
Mhm.
I just held a Facebook Live on sex and money being the two areas that trip us up the most.
Mhm.
So how do we flip our attitude to become empowered? And you've said that a couple of times, empowered with controlling spending instead of the false idea that we're powerful when we spend.
Mhm. Yeah, well, culture's teaching us, you got to live up to what all these other people are doing, and that's that's just going to cause more pain and everything. I feel very aware of putting up a front, a mask for the world to see versus what's really going on in your home and your heart, and trying to make those be more aligned. And so having understanding that working towards what you need versus what you want, wants can be delayed and saved for, but but identifying what is a need. Sometimes that is hard. You've never had to, sit down and make a list of what is my needs? What are my needs? What do I need to pay? Like, what are my bills? I don't even know what I'm, like where do I start? So sometimes it's doing that, and sometimes it's addressing those thought processes that are ingrained in our bodies from when we're childhood. We see parents either arguing about money or never heard a word about money, or encouraging possibly bad habits with money, or lots of different things, and then combine that with possible financial abuse with a spouse and never really knowing what's going on. It can just cause a lot of chaos. So it's just trying to get everything on the table. Where are we? And then like identifying what is the most priority. Like, okay, this is taking up the biggest amount of space in your mind. So let's work on this piece, and then we'll work on the next piece the next time, or something like that. Like, we're not going to do it all at one time because that's overwhelming for anybody. But just try and take it down step by step.
So if a woman comes to you and says, I don't even know where to begin. I now have all of this dumped in my lap. I don't know where to start. I know I don't have enough money. What do I do? How do you begin with someone like that? And the very foundational. And I love, April, that you are dealing with the foundational, but you're also a concierge, that you would send people
Right.
to the right person if it's not your um your
Specialty. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
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 So how
That's,
would you help a woman like that?
well, depending on how she's feeling. If she's feeling super urgent, I need to know what's going on with my money. I don't have time to deal with my past right now. I want to go through what's going on with my money. Or if she's feeling like I have all this turmoil emotionally, I want to work through that because I know at the end of the day I can figure this out. I just have these roadblocks emotionally. So kind of figure out if it's like I need right now physical numbers on a paper, and then we could start working through, your mortgage or your rent? Do you have insurance for your house? Do you have renter's insurance? And start asking those questions like one by one. And oh yeah, I forgot. I didn't even remember I have to pay taxes. I forgot this part. Okay, so we try to just write it down on a piece of paper, assuming those numbers. Because sometimes it might feel like you don't have enough income to cover your expenses because it just feels overwhelming. And sometimes that's very well true. But we want to know what that gap is between your needed expenditures and your income, and say, okay, you're short about $700 a month. What would it take to fill that gap? Would it take a part-time job? Would it take driving Uber? What are you able to do? Or are there areas in your expenses that, like your cell phone's $150 a month? Maybe that we can reduce that to a smaller plan or something like that, and start looking at both sides. Otherwise, we can start with the emotional side and try to figure out that, because once that emotional stuff is addressed and released at some level, it starts to give some more clarity that we can transfer that energy over to the number side.
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach. You meet them exactly where they're at.
Hmm.
You ask all the right questions so they can help
Yeah,
uncover.
and my goal is for them to not need me anymore. I want them to be self-assured and I can make decisions. Here's my budget. I've done this for a few months or whatever. I have numbers on a piece of paper. And even if you get trauma and everything else is overwhelming, you can go back to it
Mhm.
and restart. I just want them to be able to have the skills necessary to be able to do this for the long term. Um, but and just like everything else, it can go up and down along with all the other healing too.
Right. And one thing that I talk about in my book is that it doesn't matter the system that you use as long as it
Hmm.
works for you. When I was
Right.
first divorced 23 years ago, I used a chip clip. As
Yeah.
primitive as it was,
Yeah.
I put all my bills in there in order of needing
Uh-huh.
paid, of due date. And then when my
Uh-huh.
check came, I went to my chip clip. And
Yeah.
that's a ridiculous elementary system, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
So whatever system works for you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Some people, they need the cash in the envelope because giving that cash to somebody is really hard and it makes them really think about, is this worth transferring that cash over to somebody else, like the grocery store or whatever else? Other people, cash is just whatever. So that they're going to have different approaches because you want to have that, checks and balances within yourself too. And being able to just, maybe I'll just save that for later in my Amazon cart. I'm not going to buy it today. I'm going to sit on it for a few days and just make sure, just kind of give yourself some checks and balances too.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the coming together, the meshing of finances and mental health because it's
Hmm.
just so important. So, how do we start getting out of debt or reduction planning, which I guess is the same thing, but
Yeah.
how do we start?
So it's like once we have a budget, which I usually ask the ladies if they are able to find like their past 3 months or so. Sometimes it's going to be all over the place because it was you're just transitioning through, you don't really know what the expenses are going to be. But a lot of times looking at the past 3 months kind of gives you a start. So, okay, I spent X amount of money on groceries. That was a lot. Or I spent X amount of money on going out to eat. I want to focus more on home meals because that was crazy. But I'm going to start with what I did the last 3 months. And I'm going to take one or two categories and I'm going to work on those and try to reduce those so that I can free up some money to go towards debt reduction. So you can list out your credit cards, car loans, whatever debt you have off to the side. And we're paying everything, minimum payments. We're not paying extra. We're trying to get our budget settled first. And then once you identify, okay, I have my budget, I know how much money I have extra I want to put towards my debt. And now what do I do? Which one do I pay off first? Um, so you keep your minimum payments with them because you want to keep them current. That could be $25 per month per whatever it is for that loan. And then you put the one with the smallest balance. Doesn't necessarily need the biggest interest rate. We want the smallest balance first. We're going to get a quick win. So if you have $500 on your card, like a Target card or something, you're like, I'm going to work on that one. And then we're going to celebrate when that one is paid off because that's exciting. And then now you take that extra money you were paying on that $500 one, and you're going to take that plus the minimum payment you were paying on the next smallest one, and then kind of roll it over because like it's called a debt snowball. So you're taking that, however much you freed up from that first one you paid off, you put it onto the next one. So you're taking them one at a time and not doing everything all at once, kind of like the baby steps, one step at a time, slowing it down, making sure you're current with your other debts, but then we're not trying to pay them all off at the same time too.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, for sure. And there's something so amazing when you pay that off or when you walk in I personally walked in to pay off my final payment on my mortgage.
Oh, that's
And it
exciting.
was so exciting and so empowering. I felt like I could conquer the world at that point.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like
Yes,
just that I can't, it's hard to explain the freedom you feel when that debt gets paid off. And
yes.
even if it's a $50 balance or whatever it is that it's just been hanging around forever, you get that paid off. You want to celebrate that. I mean,
Mhm.
you don't want to go out and spend $100 on a meal or anything, but
Right?
there are ways to celebrate without spending money that are still going to fill, you know, that need for affirmation that you really can do this. Okay,
Mhm.
now let's do the next one. And then, okay, let's do the next one after that, or whatever it is that is in that situation.
Yeah, I love it. I love the practicality of what you teach and how. So you work with women one-on-one. Do you also do groups, April?
I haven't, but I've been asked to consider it.
Okay.
And so I
Yeah.
am trying to figure out that because I mean, I've been doing this, the coaching thing, like we said at the beginning, was just, I'm just trying to combine what I already knew with
Mhm.
my passion of helping women in this situation. I'm like, well, what can I do? I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I guess this. Somebody suggested it, and I'm like, people need a financial coach, like.
Yeah.
Like
That's-
that one didn't even cross my mind for whatever reason. So
yeah.
I've just started doing this the last year or so,
Okay.
and it's I'm starting in my mind to work towards a group
Okay.
idea.
But how wonderful to have individual time
Hmm.
with you. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, our finances are really personal, and so to spend time
Hmm.
with you and just kind of lay it all out. And the beautiful
Yeah.
thing about Zoom is I'm sure you have clients all over the
Yeah.
country or maybe even the world
Yeah.
for that
They're
matter.
all different time zones. I'm Eastern
Yes.
time zone. It can be all sorts of time zones.
Which I always get confused myself
I
on.
know. I'm
So
like,
yeah, for sure. Well, how wonderful. I have just really enjoyed hearing what it is that you do, and your services are so needed. And it's not just for the beginner. I mean, I know a lot of sophisticated people who really need someone to work with them on the emotional level and the financial level. Just because
mhm.
there's more zeros at the end doesn't mean that you
Right,
don't help.
right.
Yeah.
Right. It
So,
can be high income, low income, middle, everyone, finance, money doesn't have any, they don't care who you are.
right.
But if you don't know how to work with it, or you're just unsure and you need someone to sit down with you and just have this conversation. So sometimes some ladies just need one session and they're okay, I got back, my feet are back under me. I can do this. And then maybe we can check back in later. Some women need more sessions closer together to kind of get going, whatever's needed
That's
for that
amazing.
person.
So let me end by asking you how people can contact you for help and what programs you offer.
So I have a website called intentionalmoneycoaching.com, and it has a big red button at the top. So I think it says schedule an appointment or something like that. And
Uh-huh.
that's my complimentary consultation. It's a 30-minute consultation where we can just meet, discuss what's going on with their situation, how I work, and if we would be a good match for each other. And then that way, because sometimes women are looking for something that I don't offer, and I want to make sure I can direct them to the right place and make sure that maybe I'm not the right person for you, which is totally fine. Um, or yes, this would be a great fit, I feel like, and we can move forward from there.
Intentionalmoneycoaching.com.
Yeah, and I have a Facebook page and Instagram and stuff that I haven't been keeping up on posting, but it does have how to access me through the Facebook and Instagram stuff too.
Because you're too busy working with women to.
Well, I have little kids, and I'm trying to, in my mind I have a book I want to write, and I just trying to focus on other things too. But the coaching piece, I still want to, come in with the consultations, 30 minutes, no obligation. I hope that comes across. Like, I don't want to force anybody to do anything, and any recommendations I give with finances, I try to be very upfront with, you don't have to do it this way. I'm
Mhm.
just trying to present some options. Maybe this will trigger an idea of doing it differently in your mind, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, I want them to feel the empowerment. I'm going to make have them make the decisions for what works best in their situation.
Yeah, phenomenal. I love your heart that you offer that 30-minute consultation. I do the same.
Mhm.
And it's like maybe that's all you need
Yeah,
is just to hear that voice of reason. And you're just such a beautiful person for people just to approach you and to be able to say, hey, I need some help here. And it's okay because we all need help at one
yeah.
point or another.
Mhm.
So April Shippy,
Mhm.
intentionalmoneycoaching.com. For those of you who are listening, I hope you reach out, just have a 30-minute consultation with her, see how she can be of help to you. Um, and it will be worth that 30 minutes. Even if you think, oh, I've got this thing. Maybe you don't. Maybe finances, maybe there's something lurking that you don't see that you need a little bit of encouragement or help with. So it's been delightful, April. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your
Thank
time
you for
today.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Kathy Beatty with Divorce Support Anonymous, walking with you every step of the way through the trauma of divorce.